Sparks that I don't remember. Hold and let it shine. Fixing stars to fade away. Fixing stars to fade away. Fixing stars to fade away.
Hello, dear friends of Kabbalah International. We are once again with dear Mario.
Likewise, thank you, Nacho. Thank you for your words. I thank you very much, here as always, trying to move forward.
Exactly, trying to move forward. Today we are going to talk about language, and I want to start the conversation with a fragment of the Torah that says, "And God said, let there be light, and there was light."
Excellent, excellent start. To analyze language in a cosmogonical way, because language, and especially in Kabbalah when we use Hebrew language, we make a decoding of the energies. This is very important that people understand that, for example, in the Kabbalah, what we do when we start to analyze the first energies of the universe, we refer to the vowels. The vowels are the representation of the first energies of the universe. And then when the universe is organized, reorganized, is where the consonants appear. Notice how interesting that there is a language related to cosmogony. That is to say, language is not simply a vehicle for communication or of interpretation, but as a decoding of energies, which are the root energies of the universe. It is how the universe began. So in each one of the first energies, we have a Hebrew vowel that refers to those energies. When these energies explode, they are left over, and somehow they create what is called in the Kabbalah the rupture of the vessels, because all the energy containments are destroyed. There has to be a reorganization, a reordering, and in this reordering are involved feminine and masculine energies with greater balance. This means that from the Kabbalah point of view, the vowels have a lot of strength, and they cannot be balanced if the consonants do not come. And the consonants, in a way, which are the representation of the 22 channels of the tree of life, act as mediators of the vowel powers. That is actually the vowels. Of course, we know that they have the power that we can name a word through the vowel, because with consonants, we only have matter. We cannot name. If we do not have the vowel, but the vowel has so much force that it cannot build a word, it cannot make an ordered construction. To have an orderly construction, you need the consonants. So the consonants come in a second phase. They order the vowels and give rise to words. Look how beautiful is to see it from the cosmogonic point of view, because the birth of language has to do with the distribution of energies. And when you are making reference to speech, to dabar, that speech, as you rightly said, as what God did, spoke and was created. That is to say, there is a creative word. Dabar is thing and word at the same time in Hebrew. So what we have to understand is that a word creates and destroys. That is, you say a word and you can ruin a marriage or you can ruin a friendship. Therefore, be careful with words. The Kabbalah texts say, restrain your mouth, more so in the Latin world, where the Latin Passion people do not restrain themselves so much. Therefore, you have to put gebura to the passion, to the linguistic lack of control, in order to understand the sacredness of language, in the sense that we are building realities. We don't have to hurt anyone on a personal level. That can be done by language. Therefore, we have to have debates to grow, not to get into a trench against the other. And all that is done by language. Therefore, language is very versatile. It is a communication with the other. It can be a confrontation with the other. It can be a blockage to communication. It can be a negative interpretation. Language can be opened in 1,000 ways. What is true for the Kabbalah, which for many authors is a mystique of language, there is a very interesting doctoral thesis by Maria Rosario de Paz Blanco on this subject, the Kabbalah as a mystique of language. Look, Abulafia takes language and translates it into numbers. He takes language and makes the tziruf, makes the permutation. If you think about it, the great meditations of Shalom Sharabi and of almost all the tradition of the Kabbalah have to do with the name of God, with language. What do the names of God say? Each name of God is a representation of an energy within reality. I would tell you that the Kabbalah, for the Kabbalah language, is really central in the Kabbalah tradition. We meditate with language. We numerologically analyze reality through language. We communicate, of course, with language. We are self-narrated subjects by language because we narrate ourselves within a life story with our own language, that is to say, with our inner language. To speak correctly, to say the word correctly, is a whole training. Language requires a whole training of consciousness. There has to be a lot of da'at, both in Hod and Netzach, in either dimension, because they are dimensions of revelation. So there would be, I would tell you, like an invisible language in the nature of the universe, and then a visible language in our nature.
Well, you have addressed many points. You've talked about the cosmogonic point, you've mentioned the theme of the tree of life. I will share with you some headlines and then we will develop a little bit more, if you like, the theme of the Sefirot. Headlines. From the cosmogonic point of view, language is inherent in the process of creation. That would be one
Absolutely.
headline. Another headline would be the importance of speaking well, which I had already written previously. And another headline that I think is also interesting to reinforce, which is that the word is the creator of reality.
Absolutely. And if you want, we can go back to Genesis, to Bereshit, where I often say everything is. That is, all reality is in the first text of the Torah. Why is that? Because in reality, the problem between Adam and Eve is a language problem. When God says, you cannot, and God says it to Adam, Eve is not present, and says, you can't eat from the tree. Adam tells Eve, you can't eat or touch the tree. Adam adds, the touching, God doesn't tell him that he can't touch it. He can touch it. Whoever wants to can touch it. He only says, of course, he added. Then the tradition says, this is in the Mim Loes, one of the great books of the Jewish tradition. The tradition says that when the serpent appeared, the serpent said to her, the serpent in masculine, the Nahash says to Hava, says to Eve, it is lie that you cannot eat. You can eat, but how? It is forbidden to us. Nothing happens. What did Adam tell you? That I can neither eat it nor touch it. Let's do the test, says the Nahash. Touch it. And then Eve touches the tree, and the serpent says to her, and what happened to you? Nothing. Do you see? Eat. That confusion of the serpent was not the serpent's confusion, it was Adam's confusion. We could say that Adam is responsible for Eve having eaten, because the serpent's test was what Adam added. It means that when Adam added, he lied, because God never told him not to touch. And Eve, of course, believed Adam. So who is the problem? The problem was not that Eve fed Adam. The problem is that Adam ate because Eve ate. Because Eve ate, because Eve was tested by the serpent for touching, and the one who added the touching was Adam against God. That is to say, the divine order was not fulfilled. The order was distorted. It came down with an addition, and it was the addition that produced the confusion of Satan. Satan took advantage of the addition to say, Adam lied to you, and I will prove to you that he lied to you. And I'm going to prove to you that he lied to you. Touch the tree. And when she touched it, she realized that Adam lied to her. Nothing had happened to her when he touched.
We continue a little bit on the subject of responsibility. With language, I wanted to refer to the subject of the Sefirot, because you talked about Hod and Netzach, and I wanted to clarify, well, not clarify, but reinforce the subject of the type of language that both sefirot represent. In Kabbalah, we talk about two sefirot that represent two types of language. Hod would represent structured language, and Netzach would represent emotional language, also metaphorical in a way. And from there, in this structuring of language, in these two aspects of these two sefirot, how they manifest in the order of our interaction, how these two ways intervene in the way in which we communicate.
Look, in Netzach there is the symbolic language. For example, art is a Netzagian language, so to speak. It is a language that belongs to this dimension. Sculpture, painting. The poets say they are in Netzach. There are doubts. But basically, I would say that Netzach is all about language that doesn't have to do with a word, but with a symbol. And that's why art is a great type of language, but it has to be decoded later. On the side of Hod, there is a more structured language, and having a more structured language means it has much more limitation. So in Hod, you have more limitation but more precision, and in Netzach you have more imprecision but more amplitude. If you gain in amplitude, you gain in imprecision. And if you gain in precision, you gain in limitation. That is to say, you are limited by precision, or you have a lot of creativity because of the amplitude. But for that reason, you have to be in both. Because one can be creative in symbolic expansion and at the same time precise in conceptual expression. And we need both, because conceptual precision, in a way, gives me tools that more quickly reach the practice of the subject. On the other hand, the symbolic is very difficult for us as Westerners to have a relationship with the symbolic. Anyway, in the Middle Ages, when the Kabbalists were writing, the symbolic was treated to a greater extent than it is today. There still has to be, for me, a revalorization of the symbolic in our culture. We have been, I would say, idolaters of the text. We are textulators, in the sense that we love the quotation of the text to start from there. We have it as an anchor, so be careful with language, because language can become dogmatic. David Abisimbra, the professor, the teacher of Luria, born in Toledo in 1479 and died in Saft in 1562, David Abisimbra said that in Kabbalah, when a person is writing a book, immediately what he is writing has to be erased. And why? Because if what is written remains fixed, people will understand that there is already a truth. People can, and that's why I say about textolatry, declare a truth by the simple fact that it is written. Then you meet religious people who tell you, but this is true, it is written. Isn't it? For example, you go to a Catholic person, St. Paul said it in the letter. Yes, but it can be interpreted. No, it is written. There is a literalism. In the West, especially among religious people, that elevates what is written to such a category, when in reality, from the spiritual point of view, the interpretation builds the text. The text can block my ability to connect with the infinite. Therefore, language can be revealing of reality, but we can also use it to block the way to higher realities. So we have to be vigilant with language. Whoever is using language can manipulate it to block. And we have to be aware that we have to use language to penetrate language as a vacuum and to unblock it. Language is an instrument to communicate with God. It is not an instrument to block me from God.
I continue pointing out themes. Thank you, Mario.
My pleasure. A hug.